Congratulations, you've just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. I am so excited to share today's episode with you. This episode is going to be an eye-opener as we tackle a topic that affects all of us, and that's hidden toxins in our everyday lives. Our guest today is David Steinman. David is a leading voice in environmental health, investigative journalism, and consumer activism. His journey began as a journalist uncovering toxic contamination in California's oceans, and over the years, he has taken his commitment to a healthier world to a whole new level. David has published several books on environmental health, including his latest, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins. In this episode, David takes us through the dangers of unseen chemicals in our food, cosmetics, cleaning products, and even the air around us. He's going to share eye-opening insights on the impacts these toxins have on our bodies and the simple, practical steps we can all take to reduce our exposure. So, if you're ready to learn more about creating a cleaner, healthier environment for yourself, your family, and your community without feeling overwhelmed, then stay tuned. David's story and his advice will inspire you to make changes that can boost your health and help protect our world. Now, before we dive into today's episode, folks, I want to let you know I've got something special for you. If you're ready to feel stronger, leaner, and more energized than ever, I have put together a brand new guide. It's called the Ultimate Over 50 Supplement Guide. It's totally free to download. And in this guide, I cover the top 10 supplements that can make a real difference for those of us over 50, helping you build muscle, burn fat, boost energy, and support overall vitality. So if you're serious about showing up as your healthiest, strongest self, this guide is for you. So to grab your free download, head over to the show notes for this episode. That's silveredgefitness.com/307, and you can download your free copy now. Hello, my guest today is David Steinman. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, good afternoon.
I'm really excited to jump in here and talk to you today about ways that we can clean up our toxin load around us. But before we get there, let's back up a little bit. I'd like to learn a little bit about you and specifically how you got interested in this topic.
Well, I fished all of my life in California, in Los Angeles, in the Santa Monica Bay, and I would eat all the fish my friends would. We fished quite a lot. I even worked on fishing boats. What I didn't know is that a chemical company called Montrose was manufacturing DDT in South Central Los Angeles and barging their DDT tainted waste sludge into the Santa Monica Bay and dumping it in drums into the ocean, about 2,000 tons. And it was contaminated the entire food supply. And when I was an investigative reporter at the LA Weekly, dolphins started showing up on the shoreline. They were dead, and their blubber was filled with DDT and PCBs. DDT and PCBs DDT is by the way, is a pesticide. It's been largely banned, but it still creeps into the food supply. And PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyl, are heat shields, and they're used in industry. And when I was an investigative reporter, and these dolphins had very high levels and were very sick when they washed up on shore in Los Angeles and Orange County, I suggested we do a story. And we went from the dolphins to saying, well, if these chemicals are in the dolphins' blubber, I wonder what's happening with the men and women who are eating the fish from the bay, because we have a very active commercial fishery, a lot of sport fishing, and people like myself. So I went around to all the fishing piers and fishing boats with a team that included a doctor, a toxicologist, and we drew blood from about 40 people. Believe it or not, 40 people allowed us to draw their blood, approximately 40 people. And what we found was the people eating the most fish from the Santa Monica Bay had the much higher levels of DDT and PCBs than the control group, the people who weren't eating fish from the bay. This caused a congressional hearing to be held and the bay to be declared a Superfund site. And I realized then, because I had studied among those 40 people was myself, and I saw I had really high levels of DDT and PCBs too. And I realized then that if I didn't change what I was doing, that I would just keep accumulating these poisons and get really badly poisoned throughout the rest of my life. So now when I fish in the Santa Monica Bay, I generally don't eat the fish I catch. I know better. But I also learned about the entire food supply because people were asking me so many questions. You know, they were saying, well, you say the fish from the Santa Monica Bay are bad. Well, what about Boston Harbor? Okay, or what about Thailand? Because we got fish, seafood. And then they were saying, what about my burger? What about the lettuce? So I wrote Diet for a Poisoned Planet. That was my first book. And I've been writing about hidden chemical toxins ever since and watching just how the world has begun to acknowledge what a powerful force our chemical world is in our lives today.
What a powerful force chemicals are in our life today. Well spoken. Yeah. So it sounded like then you were a reporter, an investigative reporter. You had this story on these dolphins washing up, sick, dead, doing a little bit of studies and kind of figure out what's going on there. And that led you obviously to the human connection. Did you consider yourself an activist before this? Was this the first story of that type you had written, or is this something you were already interested in at that time?
I considered myself largely a journalist, and
Hmm.
when I was asked to testify as an expert key witness at that congressional hearing, and when I was speaking to impart information. But what happened is that around 2010, I really began testing a lot of consumer products for chemical toxins that weren't being listed on the label. And I had all of this inside information that I was reporting on. And I found that companies could not be shamed into becoming better citizens. They really needed a stick. And the only stick that hurt them was taking away their money, their pocketbook. So I became an activist and began using the law in California to sue companies to require them to either disclose the hidden chemical toxins in their products on their label and or remove them. And so I became an activist out of necessity. I just felt that reporting alone wasn't achieving the results, and that I don't know, Kevin, but I find that if you want to get something done in life, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I could say, "Oh, let me give you this information to somebody else," and they would take it and do the right thing and do it well. I know the subject so well now that I feel like I owe it to the public at large to keep doing what I'm doing and become an activist. Just as an example, we recently settled a case with a company called California Olive Ramp, and they're one of the biggest producers of olive oil in the nation. And we found through our testing, nobody else knew this. The government didn't know it. Nobody else knew it. We found through our testing that some of their olive oil products they've removed this chemical, by the way, through our actions. So this is actually a good news story. But a few years ago, they had carbaryl in some of their products, and carbaryl is a reproductive toxin, and it's very harmful to male sperm. By the way, studies show that men who just have high normal levels, not abnormally high levels, but just high in the high normal range, tend to have much less sperm and they're more damaged than men who don't have the carbaryl when it's measured in their bodily tissues. And we were able to get them to remove it from all of their products and stop using that pesticide, which was a big victory for consumers. But there are other products out there that are not are also have carbaryl that we need to go after too. The thing is, though, what people don't know, and it could be any product. This just happened to be one consumer product. And the good news is, I just want to repeat, it's been removed from the product. I want to be really clear on that. So we did our job, and this went to court. But when someone is using a product that's healthy for them, whether it's olive oil or something else that they use daily, and they don't know that it has this chemical in it, and it's a couple, for example, and they're just trying to have a kid, you know, they can't do it because what the carbaryl does is it moves millions of American males from subfertile or just on the borderline of between being fertile and infertile into the infertile range. It also impacts women's production of eggs too. Eggs become malformed with carbaryl exposure. So these things are really important to your health, whether you're 20, 30, or 60, because carbaryl has other effects as people get older on their health too. So
Yeah.
yeah, being an activist was not my first thing, but I did go
Right.
into it out of necessity.
Yeah, so it seems to me that it can be overwhelming, right? You're talking about carbaryl. This is just one chemical of the hundreds of thousands. And it's just so pervasive that these things are in our food. And it seems to me, obviously, the oversight is there's no toxin police out there looking at these products, our foods, beauty products. We're going to get into a bunch of this here in just a minute, but it's not really being policed. So it's people like you, it's activist groups that are taking it upon themselves to do third party independent testing that are actually bringing this to light. And if I'm not mistaken, the body that decides whether or not a new ingredient, shall we say, is safe or not is the actual company making the product. Is that more or less correct?
Sadly, what you're saying is true. When you say there are no police out there, I think that we citizens, enforcers, are the cops. We're working on behalf of the public when we do enforce laws in federal and state laws. But the federal and state governments are feckless. They're not doing the job they need to do. And God bless the folks that work there. I'm not criticizing them as people. It's just kind of the nature of things. Like you said, the threats are all around us, and what they can do because of just their resources is limited. That's why we're out there as citizen enforcers to augment what they're doing. But at the same time, that we talk about all these thousands of chemicals, which is true, we don't want to disempower people listening, because the truth is you can become a black belt in this area of your life and feel healthier immediately. So there are lots of little problems out there, but there are lots of big lessons that you take to heart that will protect you from all those little thousands of chemicals.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I love that's a beautiful jumping off point because you're right. We don't want to leave people feeling overwhelmed. And clearly, when we get into this subject, it's not hard to go down a rabbit hole and quickly feel overwhelmed. So let's talk about some practical things that we can do in order to reduce this toxin load and to be healthier, to have be healthier humans, and to pass this on, obviously, to the generation coming up. So, in your new book, you've got a new book called "Raising Healthy Kids: Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins." You do a beautiful job of just laying out, you're naming name brands and products and produce and saying this is safe from toxins, this is not. So folks, if you are looking for a handbook or a guide to give you just some clear actionable shopping tips, strongly suggest you pick that up for yourself, pick it up for your kids, pick it up for your grandkids. I think that there's a lot of wonderful information in there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we kind of start our journey there with what we eat, with food. So let's start there. Let's talk about what do we need to be careful? What are we looking for? What are the big offenders in food? And then we'll talk a little bit about what can we do to choose healthy foods.
Well, food itself is great, but the big offenders is that much of our food supply is chemically contaminated. So the really big concept in food, and this is what I start my book with, is organic. And whether you're 20 or 70, organic foods are going to improve your health almost immediately. I mean, this is proven. So, just to give you an example, every loaf of bread the nonprofit for which I'm chief officer has tested contains a nerve toxin, usually malathion, but it can contain other neurotoxic pesticides. Every loaf of bread. These little nerve poisons are called organophosphates, were developed originally as nerve gases in the early 20th century. And they're tiny poisons. And what they do in our kids is they can cause ADHD, they can kill cortical tissue, and in adults, they have the same impact. They affect your nerve synapses. So you can have less concentration, cognitive difficulties. And yeah, everyone is buying bread. Most people are not buying organic bread, but it's about the same price and it won't have any of these nerve toxins in it. That's really important. And so, I always start people with the biggest idea, organics, because that seems to entail both a physical shift in the way you shop, but also a mental shift in the way you think about what you're putting in your body and on your body, and inhaling and absorbing in other ways too for your skin.
Yeah, so you had mentioned there that obviously one of the big rocks, the big levers we have when it comes to food and reducing our toxin load is just go organic. And you did mention in there, you mentioned bread. Hey, organic bread's not going to be much more or any more expensive than normal bread. I do hear sometimes the objection that organic is so much more expensive. Is that the case? Is that true? Or and if it is, what are some hacks that we can kind of get around eating more organic foods?
Oh, great question. So that's one of the biggest myths that I have to explain. For the staples these days, organic is only a 20-year-old market. It hasn't been around a long time. And it was us, people like us, who were buying organic or asking for pesticide-free foods 20, 25 years ago that created this market. But the commodities like lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, bread, onions, apples are all competitively priced now with conventionally sourced foods. So for your family, you can definitely, if you can afford a regular apple, you can afford an organic apple these days. Sometimes, like organic carrots, will be even cheaper. So that's the first thing to realize is the staples are about the same price. And you can shop online, if you use Instacart or things like that, and find really good organic prices by price shopping different markets. But some foods that are organic are more expensive. For example, some of the soft skinned fruits like strawberries and blueberries tend to be much more expensive when they're fresh. What I do for my kids is I'll buy like these 3 pound packs of organic frozen
Yeah.
blueberries, bananas, strawberries. And when you buy them like that, one, they last longer, and two, they're about the same price as conventionally sourced. And three, the kids seem to like them just as much. I can make healthier desserts with, if you can't afford organic yogurt, you can buy non fat yogurt and cut down on the pesticides that would be stored in the fatty portions of your food. So, a dessert with some non fat yogurt. This is good not just for kids, but for adults too. And frozen organic berries. You can add some organic sunflower seeds, cashews, and make a really healthy, largely non processed dessert that will do so much for you no matter what your age. It won't have the fat calories or the additives. So, buying those organic frozen berries is a really good hack. You can also shop in season.
Yeah.
This summer, I was really enjoying the plums, the nectarines, the peaches that were organic because they're all the same price as conventionally sourced. So you can shop in season as well. Other things you can do, you can go to farmers markets. And, this is great for your community. As you get older, it's important to have support networks and go out and meet people and build up your community. And organic markets, farmers markets are a great way to do that. If you have kids or grandkids, you can take them to meet the growers and actually talk to them about how they grow their food. Community sustainable agriculture is really interesting too. This is where you invest in a local farm. We want open local land wherever we live. Open local land helps keep the air clean and fights global boiling. So you can do community sustainable agriculture where you just buy shares and you get your fresh produce delivered, weekly in these boxes, and it's all organic, and you're supporting local agriculture too. So there are actually lots of ways to afford organic produce. Um, if you can't afford organic meats, that's an interesting thing. Like, you should try when it comes to beef. That's because most of the beef sold in America has been implanted with hormones, the sex hormones. And we can talk about endocrine disruption if you want, but the
Sure.
sex hormones, adding sex hormones in your diet is not a good idea for your kids' health or your adult health because they're carcinogenic. So, and they also have antibiotics. So what I look for is grass-fed beef because that isn't finished with grains, and it's a much healthier and lower toxin. But if you really want to go low toxin and you can't go organic, look for the turkey and poultry, the chicken. And that's because the studies that I've looked at showed turkey is really clean from pesticides. And chicken is really clean from pesticides too. And you can find companies that will sell you antibiotic-free poultry as well. Poultry is not given hormones, so you don't have to worry about that. So now, if you remove the skin, you can reduce your toxin exposure even more. But just getting chicken instead of beef radically cuts down your exposure to chemical toxins. And this is proven because when women have high beef diets during pregnancy, for example, their boys are more likely to be born with genital malformations. And that's because of the exposure to the endocrine disruptors, the sex hormones that are in beef products. So you definitely can find cheaper alternatives that aren't organic. If you can get organic poultry, that's even better. But even non-organic poultry is a much better choice than beef. And you can take
The
that
conventionally grown
principle.
beef. Yeah. Yeah.
And when your kids want fast food, for example, you try, or you do, try to steer away from the McDonald's quarter pounder and maybe go to El Pollo Loco and just get some chicken and beans, which is much healthier and lower toxin. So that's kind of the way you take the principles in my book and apply them, to all sorts of areas of your life. But those are some of the ways that you can, with your diet, you can use these hacks to make it affordable. And I know that because we talked about activism. It's not like activists are living on huge, you know, budgets like you see in
Huge
Succession,
salaries. Yeah.
or Elon. So we
Right.
really do
Right.
have to watch what we do. But these are all things that will work to make living healthy affordable for you and your family.
Yeah, no, some really good tips in there. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the frozen organic fruits, especially blueberries. I always have I live out on a farm. I have, I don't know, 20 something blueberry. So when in season around July here where I am, I've got all the blueberries I can possibly eat for several months. But then for the rest of the year, I buy them in bulk. I buy them
You
frozen.
know,
Absolutely love that. I have them.
that's
I'm
so
doing it.
interesting. I've been growing blueberries here. I'm in Southern California, Kevin.
Yeah, is that
But I
right?
want to tell you
Okay.
something. The heat was so bad in July and August, I lost my blueberries.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good year this year. Here, I'm on the East Coast, so I'm in North Carolina, coastal North
See,
Carolina.
yeah. So you had more temperate,
Yeah, must have had more temper. We had a good year for
like around
blueberries.
86.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, but congratulations. That's
Yeah.
the best, to have your own like
Well,
that.
yeah. Look,
That's
I mean,
great.
I'm obviously in a special. So if you are somebody who has a little bit of land and even a modest amount of land, I'm only on 3 acres. Got about 16 chickens, so I have they eat only they're free range. They eat whatever they want really, but they're not given any special kind of medicines or anything. So I have all the eggs I want. I've got a bunch of raised bed gardens. So in season, I have my own grown vegetables. But I love the idea that you're talking about this community sustainable agriculture. So you can do that for meats as well as vegetables. Meat, those of you that are not in really dense, metropolitan areas, it's going to be easier. But get out to your farmers markets, meet these people. Some of them will invite you. You can go and visit their farms. There are a lot of options. You can go in, you can co-op a cow. Like you can have partial ownership in a cow. You and another family go in on a cow that you're comfortable as being raised in a grass-fed, grass-finished manner, and you'll each have half a cow at the end of that life cycle there. So there's a lot of things you can do. There are some. How do you feel about some of these? I see these popping up all over the place. Butcher Box, I think, was probably the first in this space, or first big person in this space. But they're doing these very sustainably grown organic meats delivered to you as a service. I know there's a bunch of regional ones popping up as well, but that seems to be a new market as well, as there's more and more awareness to the foods that we're eating, especially in that red meat, right? Where, like you said, when conventionally grown beef is not ideal for your overall health, or certainly when it comes to toxin loads. So sourcing sustainably grown biodynamic beef that's grass finished is difficult, but it is possible, and I think it's becoming easier as more people are becoming aware of that. Do you feel that's something that's more people are becoming aware of, and is there hope in that space? Because really the big money is in this giant agriculture, but these small farmers are, it seems like they're trying to make a little bit of a comeback in this space.
Oh, I love it. I love what you're talking about. And yeah, I have seen them, and I think it's great. We really need to unite as people, as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's two universes out there, and I hope more people join the one we're in, because I do a lot of work in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, too. Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, well, what I'm happy about is that they're using less plastic in their shipping and their packaging and more compostable ingredients. They're getting rid of the forever chemicals, these companies. They're being much more
Yeah.
conscientious. And, we really do need to support like small farmers, buy local, especially our food.
Yep.
But also, we just need to be more united as a country. And I really feel that what we're doing is, when people do support CSA or go out to farmers markets, we need to build our communities and make them healthy. So it's kind of part of a larger vision. So yeah, I love it that they're joining the market. This is all from consumer desire. That's the really good news, Kevin. It isn't like the federal government came down and said, oh, we're going to give you the organic seal. It was the people clamoring up to the leaders
Right.
saying, we need
Yeah.
safer foods. And studies have proven that when you are on that organic diet, for example, and Butcher Box and all of these companies that are selling sustainably grown grass-fed beef are part of that movement. But the studies
Sure. Yeah.
show less diabetes, less obesity, less cancer,
Yeah.
fewer complications during pregnancy, higher sperm count for men. All of this is to our advantage. And now it's proven. 20 years ago, when we were clamoring for organic foods, the studies weren't out yet because there was no organic food. But now, with decades
Yeah.
that we've had,
Yeah.
the scientists have been doing the studies and showing us that we're right. Organic is healthier for us. So yeah, I love that the market is growing. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I feel optimistic in this space for the first time in a while. I feel like there's this grassroots movement led by people like you, right? These consumer advocates, these third-party citizen watchdogs. But we have now with social media, right? We've got like the Dr. Casey Means, we've got the Food Babe. I don't know if you know who these people are, but they're very popular. I guess you might because they're in your space somewhat. But RFK Jr., we have all these people with these big platforms now that are really championing, there's with this message that, hey, our food is poison, it's making us sick, and we, the people, have to change this. The systems that are built to perpetuate this aren't going to change it by themselves. We vote every day with our dollar. Come on, people, let's get together and let's affect some change here. Are you optimistic? Does it feel to you like we are moving in the right direction? Because let's face it, this is a big Titanic of a behemoth of a monster to turn around. And when I say this thing, I'm talking about just the industrial food, pharma, medical complex that's just kind of gotten us where we are today. Are you optimistic that this is changing? Are people like you putting a dent in this universe?
Totally optimistic. Totally optimistic.
Right on. Okay.
And no matter what, I'm optimistic, and I can take this from the very personal to the social. Like, say you're 60 years old and you've done so many things in those 60 years, and now you want to be healthy, right?
Right.
Your body responds right away to safer products and safer foods. There was a study done recently that when men and women, I think it was women substituted safer cosmetic products, their breast cancer markers were reduced. In other words, these chemicals affect your genes. They start producing different markers, risk factors for cancer, whether it's high estrogen or toxic forms of estrogen or testosterone. But all of these markers went down when they switched to safer products almost immediately. The body responds immediately. Well, society and the world responds just as much, just as quickly. So there's not enough of us. We need to bring more people aboard. But I'm optimistic because we have no other choice. I think in some ways we've reached a tipping point with our environment in terms of climate. We were talking about the blueberries earlier, And I've really had to adjust my growing here in Southern California because in July and August, the sun is just too powerful for the plants. And I think this is going to continue for a while, that the summers are going to get hotter and hotter. But as we continue to make smart shopping choices, conscientious choices, as you say, vote with our shopping dollars, we're going to lessen the demand for petrochemicals and petroleum and those processes that are contributing global warming. So the whole earth over time will begin to heal. We've just got to bring more people into the fold and we'll win. I think that's where the arc is going. In terms of short term, there's some really dangerous trends though, like the younger people are getting cancer in higher rates than ever before. We were winning the war on cancer for a while. In the 70s and 80s, when we got rid of most of some of the toxic pesticides, government was actually doing something for us. But now we've backslid and our kids are suffering for it and we as adults are suffering for it. But I know that we can make an impact with our shopping choices. I just want people to feel that when they're doing these things, no, you're not a fool. You're doing the right thing when you're just as an example, say you're buying a shower curtain to get into other kinds of toxicity. A lot of shower curtains are made with polyvinyl chloride, which is very carcinogenic. And also, if you remember what happened in Palestine, Ohio, with the train derailment, it was polyvinyl chloride that contaminated folks' air there. And when you go to Cancer Alley, it's the chemicals used to make polyvinyl chloride that are contaminating their air in Louisiana. But so you have these choices. What you can also buy? You can buy an organic linen cotton shower curtain that's just so much healthier for you and your health, but also for the planet. And you might say, well, yeah, it's more expensive. This is more expensive than spending $20 on a polyvinyl chloride shower curtain. But this is part of what it takes for people to know they're doing the right thing. This is not a joke. It's not a gag. When you buy these products, you're not alone. That's why they're on the market, because many other people are buying them. And you know what, Kevin, in my opinion, we don't have enough adults in Washington, D.C. We have a lot of kids and we have a lot of children. We're playing games and trying to divide instead of unite. And I just really want people to
Amen,
feel
brother.
when they invest in these
Yeah.
things, someone may say, well, why are you doing that? What difference? It makes a difference. What difference does it make? It makes a difference. And I'll show you the faces of folks who will benefit by that lessened demand for petrochemicals, because I know them. They're in Cancer Alley, they're in Pennsylvania, they're in Alabama. Just, when we buy these so am I optimistic? Hey, folks, next time you go into a restaurant, bring your own to-go carton made out of stainless steel and avoid the styrofoam. Because I've got friends who live next to the plant called Amsty that makes the styrofoam down in Cancer Alley, and I don't want them to breathe this stuff. We are really in this together. And yeah, I'm optimistic because look at the power you have. There's so many things you can do and that we're changing. So yeah, we're going to go through some rough times, but the arc is on our side, the arc of history.
Yeah, I love that you say that. You mentioned that a couple times. The arc is on our side. I like that you said you're optimistic about the arc of where we're going. And I agree. I think there's reason for optimism. I think part of it is just back to that kind of overwhelming thing. It's, when you say things like, hey, your shower curtain, I bet most people listening to this have never given a second thought to their shower curtain or to the takeout containers. And it's not just because there's a couple of things happening here. When you buy that, on Amazon or wherever, Target, wherever you get the little plastic inside liner for your shower curtain, there's the toxin load that you're bringing home with you. But there's also a factory somewhere, like you mentioned, Cancer Alley, famously in Louisiana, where these things are being made. And that is obviously horrible for the communities around. It's horrible for the environment, for the planet. So when we make these smarter choices, we're going to see these health benefits happen right away, but there's this bigger picture happening as well. You're reducing this toxin load, not just for you and your family, but for the planet overall. And I think that's a very empowering thing, right? As opposed to disempowering or being overwhelmed, saying, I'm making this difference in the world. Now, let's see, David, where I want to go next is, where are these chemicals hiding in plain sight? I know we talked about food and our food supply. We didn't even mention the ultra-processed foods, and Lord knows I've talked about that enough on this podcast, but let's just say there's a ton of toxins in highly ultra-processed foods as a rule. You've got some really good tips in terms of whole foods, but where else in our bathroom, in our kitchen, in our cleaning closet, in our drinking water, what are the worst offenders? Help us identify those. And then let's maybe work on a path for, you gave some really good tips on food. What are some things we can do inside our house when it comes to the clothes we're wearing, the bed we sleep on, and the bedding we sleep on, and the cleaning products, the beauty products? How do we get our arms around all of that?
So all of those in my new book, Raising Healthy Kids, which it's good for adults too, raising healthy adults.
It is good. I can attest to that, folks. It is good for adults as well. Yes.
I take a 360-degree view. So I do go into all these areas. Like with cosmetics, there are lots of ways to buy safe cosmetics that people aren't thinking of. For example, one of the big issues with cosmetics is the presence of a chemical called phthalate, which is a microplastic, and it's used often in cosmetics with fragrances. So
Yep.
one of the big things folks can do is to start to buy safer cosmetics. And how do you know? You said hiding in plain sight. Once you know how to read a cosmetic or cleaning product ingredient label, you can quickly identify all the bad products with just a few marker chemicals. Take, for example, cosmetics. If you see fragrance listed on a cosmetic label, it's very likely that it will have those phthalates, which for adults decrease sperm. They decrease sperm in the males. They impact egg production in kids. They cause cognitive difficulties, IQ loss, and altered gender behavior because these are estrogen mimics or endocrine disruptors. So with cosmetics, one of the big things is just to avoid those with fragrance. Now, one of the areas that's really underserved is fragrance when you buy it. Like my kids bought English leather and canoe fragrance when they were in their teens, and I went to the lab and had them measured, and they were just loaded with phthalate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are fragrances you can buy now that are made with essential oils and that
Mm-hmm.
are much more likely not to contain phthalates. And you really want to be aware of that. If you are going to have children, do not use the ordinary fragrances that are sold there. Your kid will be exposed to phthalates at levels that are not safe. So that's just and you don't, as an adult, you don't want to be exposed to them. Another thing to look for when you're buying, say you're buying a body wash or shampoos, is you look for any ingredients on the label that have these three letters, ETH, in them, like sodium lauryl sulfate, sodium myryl sulfate, because all of these are what are known as ethoxylated alcohols, and they are frequently contaminated with a carcinogen called 1,4-dioxane. Unfortunately, this 1,4-dioxane is also a water contaminant, and it contaminates many public drinking water supplies now in America. One reason why is because we're using all these personal care products that are contaminated with it. In fact, New York had to pass a law banning dioxane at levels above 2 parts per million in some products because it's such a big problem. So if you see a product that has like phenoxyethanol, ETH, alcohol ethoxylate, sodium myryl sulfate, sodium lauryl sulfate, all of these are products you don't want. It means the
Yeah.
manufacturer is way out of date when it comes to public health and safety, and you can avoid them. You can just get rid of them. If you have them in your house, you can toss them, or you can just use them up and not use them again. Because it's not only bad for you, but it's also bad for the environment again, because this dioxin gets into our public drinking water supplies, and then
Right.
it
Right.
increases risk for cancer. It's costly to filter out. So that's a really good hack. Just look for ETH. Say, let's go from cosmetics for now. We'll go to cleaning products. Your laundry
Well,
detergent.
actually,
Oh
David,
yeah,
hang on. Before we jump from the cosmetics, I'm going to spend just a second here before we get to cleaning products. So, a couple of resources. Are you a big fan of EWG,
yeah,
Environmental Working
yeah.
Group? So I thought you might be. They have an app on there. You can just download their EWG. I think it's EWG app, but if you just Google Environmental Working Group, and they've got a little barcode scanner, and you can scan pretty much any commercially available product that you're going to find in, say, a department store. And this would work, I think, for cleaning supplies as well as cosmetic. But that's a really good first line of defense. Hey, is this a green light, yellow light, or a red light? They do a really good job. Again, kind of going back to that citizen watch guard sort of thing. I went down this, I was a typical male guy 7, 8, 9 years ago where I, right guard with probably an aerosol and I would just use the, I don't know, Irish Spring soap or something and some Pril. I didn't give any thought at all to it. And I switched completely. I was introduced to a woman, Nadine Artemis from Living Libation. So there's companies out there like Living Libations, Give a Derm, Give a DERM, Give a Derm. But there are now these little, again, kind of they're the equivalent maybe to your farmers markets, right? So these are little boutique places that are militantly anti toxins. They are specifically making these really, in some cases, very high end type things. In other cases, more generally accessible hygiene products, but really strongly encourage people to look for alternate vendors as opposed to going to a department store. I will say that in your book, you name names. There are, if you are somebody who's buying some of these beauty supplies, some of these soap, shampoos, things for your kids or for your grandkids. In that book, you list them, and they've got a very simple. There's what is it? It's a little shopping cart
Yeah,
or a
black,
an
black
X'd out one,
paper.
right? So, but this is safe. This is not. This has a heavy toxin load. So, a couple of resources for people there. Certainly the book. Check that out. Certainly ewg.org. And I think there are other watchdog groups out there doing similar type stuff. But just wanted to kind of throw that plug out there for folks. That's a big one, especially for guys. It's easy for us. Most guys probably use a half a dozen beauty products. We got some shaving cream. We got some shampoo. Some soap, or if you're like me, your soap and shampoo is probably the same thing. Deodorant, maybe. Not a whole lot, right? It's easy for us. For you ladies, most of you, I think I read the average woman puts 66 different products on her body in a day, and most of those are heavily laden with, so you're just bathing yourself in this very toxic soup. And just remember, anything that goes on your skin is an organ, and it absorbs this, goes straight into your bloodstream. No bueno when it comes to the toxins there.
Yeah, oh, that's really good advice. Plus, there are a lot of certified organic cosmetic products available.
There are. That's right. That's a thing now.
And so you'll find those too. And you're right. It's the cosmetics you choose are really important, and guys should be just as aware of this. We need to be one, because it's some of the products, like I mentioned, do contain carcinogens that increase your risk for cancer, and endocrine disruptors, which interfere with your own hormone production, including testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's vital. So that's a really big area, cosmetics. For your kids too, you want to buy safe, certified organic
absolutely
products.
All right. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I cut you off. I interrupted you. You were getting ready to go into cleaning products, because this is another area I suspect a lot of people listening probably don't give a lot of thought to. Talk to us a little bit about what's in our cupboards that we're using to clean things with.
With cleaning products, I took a friend of mine, we went to Target recently. She wanted to buy safe laundry detergent. We had the same issue with laundry detergent that we had with shampoos, those ethoxylated alcohols. So again, there are not as many green cleaning products as I'd like, not as many good ones. But one thing you can do is find a safer laundry detergent. And again, because they'll be contaminated with dioxane, and all that water that goes from your washer into the groundwater with dioxane, it's just terrible for the environment. Also, you'll absorb the dioxane from your clothing, or just by handling the laundry detergent. And so that's one thing. Now, good brands are like Ecos is a good brand, Dirty Lab is a good brand too. It's called Dirty Lab. And also with the cleaning products, they are really not good for kids. So if you're pregnant, you definitely want to look for the least toxic cleaning products. But what I found was, in cleaning products, some of the major brands that claim to be safer really are not so safe. Like, I was really disappointed in Seventh Generation. I think this is a little bit of greenwashing, because I was using their all-purpose cleaner and noticed it contained a chemical called Laneth, Laneth. It had the ETH in it. It didn't say this when I bought it, because I bought it online and I wasn't able to see all the ingredients. So I won't use that one again. So it's kind of like greenwashing, because Seventh Generation has a reputation for being really environmental. So again, you want to look at the ingredients and be eliminating anything with the ETHs in it. Other harmful ingredients are like cocamide DEA will be in some products, triethanolamine. The simplest thing to do with cleaning that I found is distilled vinegar, alcohol, and just your own spray bottle. Most stuff will get cleaned.
And not much you can't clean with that combo.
Otherwise, I use Ecos, because I think they're one of the cleanest green cleaning brands. Also, all their products don't have dyes in them, and their packaging, it's made out of plastic. Unfortunately, it's recycled, and there are no dyes in the plastic. It's transparent, so you just cut down a little bit there. The thing though about being inside the home is all your dust. You really do want to clean, because dust is like the repository of every toxic chemical you bring into your home. And if you don't clean the dust in your home, you're going to keep re-inhaling all the chemical toxins that are emitted from your electronics, for example, that can be brought in on the soles of shoes and so on. So dusting as part of cleaning is really important.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, some great tips there. And again, I'm pretty sure your EWG app is going to work on your cleaning supplies. Now, have you noticed seems to be this trend of small, healthy, alternative companies getting some momentum and then getting bought out? Like, for example, you mentioned Seventh Generation. Well, that's a Unilever company now. They're no longer a green, mom and pop shop trying to change the world. They took their money, and who blames them, right? But they sold, and Burt's Bees got sold, of all things. I got acquired by Clorox. Go figure. So there's these companies that are starting out as, with this mission. Dave's Killer Bread is another good example. And then when they get this momentum, when they're big enough, some of these big companies are just coming in and they're just gobbling them up. They're giving these people ridiculous sums of money that they can't say no to. So I think you had mentioned the term greenwashing. I do think that there's a good bit of that. So some of these bigger companies know that we as consumers want to be healthier products, but as opposed to them reformulating and making healthier products, I think it's easier for them to just print new labels that have something pretty and green looking on them to do this kind of greenwashing. Is that fair?
Yeah, if you know green cleaning products, that's a really underserved area. And again, it's
Sure
because
is.
a lot of companies that claim to be green are just not. And
They're not very green at all. That's right.
the
Yeah.
ones that I mentioned, Dirty Lab and Ecos, have held really true to the higher standards. So I think it's important to support them. And if there are smaller companies that are using certified organic ingredients, support them too.
Heck
That's the
yeah.
way we
Yeah.
promote change, good change.
And it goes back to that you're doing yourself justice, you're doing your family justice for your personal health, your family health, but really for the whole world health. If we're not, if again we're voting with our dollars every time we buy these products that are laden with these chemicals in them, well, those chemicals are being produced somewhere. So there's this to follow that money trail back, and if we can start to put a dent in that, I think we can really affect some pretty amazing change here. Well, David, I know we've been going for a little bit here. Are you good on time still?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. A couple other things that I want to cover with you, a couple big ones. Let's go here first. What about plastic? How can is plastic as evil as it seems to be in kind of the hippie granola crunchy circles? And if so, what's our action plan there? Because it seems like it's hard to get away from plastic. It's everywhere. And by plastic, I mean plastic in all its various forms as well.
Plastic, plastic, plastic. We can't.
Plastic, plastic,
We
plastic.
are
Yeah.
plastic these days. Where we have it in our
We are.
bodies,
We really are. Yes, it's scary. I mean, they're finding it in placentas. They're finding it in it's
human
just
brain.
everywhere. These microplastics in the brain.
Um,
Yeah.
I, I think we're definitely on plastic overload. And to bring this all home, going back to Louisiana, where the nonprofit for which I work is doing its work, there's a company called Formosa that wants to build a $9 billion plastic plant, what they call the most advanced plastic plant in the world, in Cancer Alley, St. James Parish, on a portion of land called the Old Buena Vista Plantation, where there are grave sites of the enslaved, and where the community is already under siege from benzene, ethylene oxide, chloroprene, and other kinds of very toxic air contaminants. They want to build a new plant, and the only way to stop it is for us to lessen our demand for plastic. So I think it's vital to lessen our demand for plastic. And this is something that we're all becoming aware of and acting on just recently. But it's so important. In these communities, like where I was just talking about, Cancer Alley, the water is very contaminated. It has pesticides in it and industrial chemicals. So people are buying tons of plastic bottled water. And one of the first things I did when we got down there, was start to supply water pitchers, filter pitchers with filters in them, because it was so offensive to me that we're being asked to buy bottled water made out of in plastic bottles when it's the plastic that's killing the folks down there. And I said, to help break this cycle, you can produce better quality water with a good water filtration system for your faucet, or for your house, or for your faucet. And I showed them how. I said, for $25 you can buy a faucet filter that does a really good job, and then for $30 a pitcher filter that removes forever chemicals and so many other chemicals, and have cleaner water without the plastic. It's cheaper, and it makes a statement. So when it comes to plastic, I know people are going to say, well, glass is heavier and it costs more to transport. But at this time in history, I think it's really important for those of us who are aware to make a statement. So just, again, this is like being a conscientious shopper. Like, I had to buy spatulas. And you know how many spatulas are made out of black, forever, non-stick coating? And
Yeah. Yeah. Most of them.
these have forever
Yeah.
chemicals in them. They're so toxic. So why not buy the stainless steel spatula? Just help reduce the load. Oh, another thing, going back to Cancer Alley, there's a school there called the Fifth Ward Elementary School, which is right next to what's known as the Danka neoprene plant. And I was looking at the jump rope I bought a few years ago. The handles are made out of neoprene. I was looking at my mouse pad. The mouse pad I bought a few years ago is made out of neoprene. Well, you know what I did? I bought a mouse pad made out of cork more recently because
I'm sorry. Say that again. Out of
yeah,
cork.
cork. Just because I want to get rid of
Mm-hmm.
this, the plastic, or in this case neoprene. Same with the jump rope. I don't need neoprene handles. I'll get just a cloth rope and wooden handles, and it'll be just fine for me. I don't have to make those kids at the school and in that community of Reserve, Louisiana. I don't need the kids and the people there to suffer just because I wasn't, just because of what I was doing. So,
Mm.
as you mentioned, the plastic, phthalates in cosmetics are plastics too. They're just nanoplastics. So, when you mention plastics, there's so many things we need to be doing. When you're shopping, for example, instead of buying everything in plastic bottles like mayonnaise, for example, or mustard, get them. You can get them in glass bottles, and that's a good statement right now. You know what? It tastes better. Like,
Yeah.
what I hate? We have milk. I hate milk when it's in those plastic containers, and these chemicals leach.
Hmm.
Now, so it
Yep.
just tastes better to me. So I buy them in non-plastic containers. Strauss Family Farms in California, for example, sells beautiful organic milk in glass, just like the old days with cream
Yeah.
on the
Love
top.
that. Love
It's
that.
so much healthier
Yeah.
for us and the environment.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
cosmetic companies now, there are cosmetic companies that are either using stainless steel, cleaning companies. Oh, the big trend with cleaning companies, we didn't mention this, is, you buy your little laundry detergent in sheets now and avoid plastic containers entirely. You can buy all-purpose cleaner now in little tablets that you put into reusable, refillable bottles and avoid plastic
Hmm.
containers entirely. So there is a really big trend to go anti-plastic. And I see the connection with our personal health. But as I said, the folks in Cancer Alley are trying to stop this Formosa plant. And the way to help them is to lessen our demand for plastic, because that plant's going to make more polyethylene bags, plastic water bottles, the materials for polyester suits. You know, we can do without that. We
Yeah.
don't
No, that's
just
not
throw
good
away
stuff.
stuff. And I see
Yeah.
a lot of climate activists when they're doing interviews, for example, and they'll have a plastic water bottle in their hand or plastic
Yeah.
straws. And I'm saying to myself, there's a few lessons you learn in life. If you're a politician, you never get your picture taken with a drink in your hand. Okay, it's just a rule. You never do that, right? If you're a climate activist, don't get your picture taken with a bottled water in your
Yeah.
hand.
There's a tip there
Yeah.
for, yeah.
So I am anti-plastic. I think we're on plastic overload.
I think we're on plastic overload as well. And it seems to me what's happened here in modern culture is we've traded our health for convenience, really, for both on the food as well as the product side. And some of it we've done, or probably most of it we've done without malice. We haven't done this with bad intent. We don't want to harm ourselves or the planet. We just have done it unwittingly. And now we find ourselves, like you said, in kind of this dangerous tipping point. And so it's time now or never, to do something about it. And I come at this from as a nutrition coach and a personal trainer. I'm all about, hey, we should eat healthy to be healthy. We should move our bodies and not live sedentary lifestyles. And then you'll be more self-actualized that way. And your whole life will be better. All of these things. And certainly reducing your toxic load goes a long ways towards you being healthy, strong, lean, vital, capable human being and showing up as your best self in your second half of your life. But there's this whole other side of what happens when all of us get together and have the same mission, right? And that has to do with the planet, that has to do with our community, that has to do with our families. And it's to me, it's an act of service, it's an act of beauty, it's an act of love, self love, and agape love for mankind and for the planet when we make these decisions. But I think the first step is just being aware, because to be honest, I mean this all came, like I said, I heard a podcast. It was a rewilding podcast, and they had this guest come on, and she just went on and on and on about all the different talks. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm using all of them. I was, so one day I was unaware, the next day I was aware, and I took some steps that changed my life. And so hopefully, folks like you are getting out in front of people. I know that there's a lot of activist groups out there that are working in this space, and I really just take my hat off to folks like you that are out there really beating the drum. You're doing the work to write the books, to write the blogs, to get on the podcast, to be involved in these communities like Cancer Alley and these places that are really hurting. So really commendable stuff. I absolutely love it.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I was looking around for all the adults in the room when I was in Washington, D.C. recently, and we are the adults. We are the adults.
We are the
This is our
adults.
country. This
Yeah.
is our country. And if we want it to work right, we need to be healthy. We need our kids to be healthy, because democracy isn't easy. It's a
Right.
difficult thing. The folks who wrote our Constitution and created this great system were very smart people. They weren't dummies. And with all this plastic and
Right.
stuff that you're talking about, it dumbs down an entire generation. It robs all of our kids of IQ points. It may be your kid
Yeah.
is in the normal range, but they're still going to lose IQ points. And what we need
Yeah.
to have a really healthy society is kids who can deal with complex situations. Because when you lose IQ, your kids tend to become more authoritarian oriented. It's just simpler to take commands rather than to work through consensus and okay, working with divergent views and integrating them. So, in, in Washington, as I mentioned before, we're getting a lot of division. Both parties, it's like we're enemies of each other. And I don't, and we can't be that way, and we can't act that way. And I think chemical, what we're talking about here, is a way to connect people from all different backgrounds. That's my hope, that we can connect people from all different backgrounds and realize, they say that a lot of folks want to give the middle finger to government because they've been so disappointed. And I kind of understand that sentiment, but I do believe in government. And I would say if you want to do that symbolic gesture, why don't you aim it at some of the corporations that are poisoning us and don't really care about us at all?
Amen.
And so
Yeah,
I
there
just
you
kind of
go.
want to
Let's
shift
go.
that anger a little bit.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you can do, if you
Yep.
want to do your thing with the government. I'm not a nihilist. I'm not going to go there. We need government. We need it to be better, but we need it. We need to get better laws. That's up to us, the people. But when
Yep.
it comes to chemical toxins, it's impacting everyone. And, so just
Right.
shift a little bit of that angry energy over to making your own life healthier and making it healthier for all of us. Just, be a little more united because we have to be the adults. Because if we don't, we really are at a tipping point. We're going to get too hot as an environment, as a climate, as a nation. The temperature will continue to increase. Um, our kids will continue to have higher rates of cancer again. And we as adults won't be as healthy. And we need people to be healthy into their 60s, 70s, and 80s nowadays. We are an aging society. And part of that aging
Yep.
is lack of fertility, which comes back to the chemicals in our environment. But we
Sure
need
does.
people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s to be relevant too. They are teachers.
Amen. Yeah, that's what we do on this podcast. We rail against that. It's all downhill from here, and there's no reason we can't be as strong and vital and as self-actualized as any point in our life, in our 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s here. And you're right. It's scary. Something's wrong. We're fatter, we're sicker than ever before, in spite of spending historic amounts of money, $4.5 trillion in medical spend every year just here in the US alone. Almost 75% of this population is now overweight or obese. 50% of us have diabetes or prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. 1 in 2, 50% Americans now are expected to have cancer in their lifetime. Young adult cancer is rising. I think it's almost 80% just in the last 10 years. Autism is crazy, crazy on the ride. You had already mentioned this. Our intelligence, IQ seems to be going down. Infertility and erectile dysfunction rising at an alarming rate. And actually, for the first time in a long time, our longevity, we're living less. We're not living as long as we used to. So I don't think technology is going to save us. I don't think government's going to save us, but I do think it's people like you. I think it's people like us as a community that are responsible for changing that. I think the days of us waiting for authority, government, medical, industry, whatever, to fix that ain't going to happen. It's not in their best interest. There's a financial reality, it is what it is. But we, the people, have the power to change that financial reality. If you quit buying plastic completely, plastic won't be made. It just won't be profitable, right? It goes back to just plain old capitalism there. So I do think that that's an interesting place to kind of land here, is that intersection between politics, culture, the food we eat, the products we buy, but very much so going back to, hey, you could either be overwhelmed or you could be optimistic. I feel like I am optimistic. I do think that there are enough people now starting to wake up and to want to and realize that they're empowered to make this change, right? As opposed to being disempowered or feeling that they have no control over bad things happening.
Yeah, I think the millennials and our the youngest generations are becoming much more aware of their chemical environment because they're really the main victims now. And
Yeah.
what's interesting though is that they're the most affected, and they need to be educated. We need to put teaching about chemicals into the school curriculum. We should have, like we used to teach health in grade school. We
Yeah.
need to teach that,
Yeah.
like how do you read a shopping label? How do you choose a safe and healthy product? We put on a
Right.
green cleaning seminar at the Fifth Ward School in Louisiana, which is next to the Danka plant. We actually put on a whole day seminar to educate the kids there. The reason is that, to all the listeners, you may not know how much healthier you can feel because you've never been there. So for a couple of weeks, try what we're talking about. Try going organic. Try
Yeah.
getting rid of the plastic. Pick up my book, Raising Healthy Kids. Try it for a couple of weeks and see if you don't feel better over those 2 weeks, because that's how fast these things can happen. But you won't know it until you do it, because most of us, we do live so much in the dark. Many of the things you told me today are going to enlighten me, Kevin. And I hope the things I say will
Yeah.
shed more light into people's lives. but you may not know how much better you can feel until you do it. So buy the ticket
Yeah.
and then buy the
Yeah.
ticket, take the trip, and you'll find out that this is
Yeah.
a really good trip. Try the organics, the anti-plastic,
Amen.
and then tell us how you feel in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
All right. So there you go, folks. That's our challenge for you. So let's wrap it up here. David, where can people find out more about you? Where do you want to send them?
Oh, davidwilliamsteinman.com, my website,
Yep.
and by David Steinman on now known as X, and David Steinman _author on Instagram. You can go to Amazon and just put in Raising Healthy Kids, my name, David Steinman, and the book will come up. And there's an audio version, there's a hardcover version. So you have a couple choices and a Kindle version. So there's different ways to get it. I hope people will read it no matter what their age, because as I said, give it a couple weeks. And I really feel you'll feel better. That's just, it
Yeah, the human body is amazing. We are detox machines. We have that built into our biology, and that's a wonderful thing. We're just a little overloaded. So like David's saying there, give this a couple weeks. I promise it'll make a difference. That book, again, is Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins. Now, look, most of you listening probably don't have little kids, but I bet your kids have kids or getting ready to have kids. So here's what I would recommend. Buy that book for yourself and buy that book for a kid, right? For your adult children, if you have adult children. I think that would be great. Christmas is coming. Make a great Christmas gift as well. And folks, I will put all of David's social media information, his website, as well as a link to the book into the show notes. You guys can find that there. David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and not just sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us, but sharing your deep passion for this subject with us. I really commend you for the work you're doing. We need more folks like you out there in the world getting this word out. So thank you so much for taking the time and being a guest here on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's been great talking to you too.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources, including our brand new Over 50 supplement guide over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find all of our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks helpful for you. I'll put links to everything we talked about today in the show notes. You folks can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/307. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to please click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I'd really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.